virtue for making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. For all who want to train on the bodhisattva path, I have written the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, following what has been said by the excellent ones, meaning of the sutras, tantras, and treatises. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I have relied on the sutras and the words of the excellent, so I think these bodhisattva practices are without error. However, as the great deeds of bodhisattvas hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non sequiturs. Through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate and conventional altruistic intention, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells in neither extreme, not in the world nor in peace. Good morning, everyone. Kempo is with a is it in the Virginia? I always confuse Virginia and the Maryland Dreekman Center's down there, but he's down there. I think Ben drove him down. It's the recognition of Jigna Sumgun's Parinirvana, right? And there's a whole bunch of Drigan Lamas and Kempos there. It sort of rotates around every year. We're celebrated. So he's down there today. So I happened to, I don't know how I came across it this week, but it made me think about, have you ever heard of this this story that Plato told? He gave a teaching on the cave, people living in the cave. I think it's, I'm continually amazed by the Greeks, actually. I'm convinced that, we've inherited sort of a part of their culture, but maybe not the more deeply spiritual aspects of it. But nonetheless, Plato's cave, that beings are living in this cave, and there's some sort of illumination which creates shadows on the wall. And everybody thinks those shadows, since they're in the cave, that's their entire environment, they think those shadows are real. And all the drama that plays out is in this shadow play. So it's a very Buddhistic image, because truly we're all in a cave. And that's what we do. The teachings on emptiness, you start looking at the shadow itself, the shadows, and you see that there's really nothing substantial there. And so it has this existence. Yes, it has form, it has existence, but it doesn't exist in the way that it appears to exist. This solid, absolute reality, a name that you can point to, and that completely delineates the reality of that object. It's not that. And so this remarkable thing, how do you get out of the cave, or how do you get a proper understanding while being in the cave? It says in the Amitāya Sutra, all these other Buddhas praising Buddha Shakyamuni because he's teaching the Dharma in an impure realm, the realm of shadows. In the Pure Lands, everything is conducive to Dharma. They say the birds sing the Dharma, the babbling brooks are teaching Dharma. Everything is conducive to your practice. So, attainment takes place very quickly, so to speak. And you have the ability to emanate, to go to different Pure Lands, live from the different Buddhas. So you're getting this full, complete instruction. But Buddha Shakyamuni is teaching in this impure realm, where everyone's motivated by the shadows, what they think they want the shadow to do, and they don't have the power to do that, yet they all do. The image of samsara that the Tibetans teach is a razor blade with honey on it. People are licking the honey enthusiastically all the time, but they don't see the deeper effect. The first thing is that taste of sweetness, but then, the warmth of your own blood. So it's very vivid. There's this famous story that's said to be historic of one of the Buddha's disciples. I think it's one of the 10 great disciples. I can't remember. His name started with a K, but I can't remember it. And he had, great mental powers. He could see all sorts of things, previous lifetimes and all of that. It's said that in some ways his vision was equal to the Buddha's in that one aspect. But yet, he still went on this daily begging. He had the ability, apparently, to manifest food if he needed it. But yet, he followed the rules of the Sangha, of the ordained Sangha, and he went on this, daily begging role that the Buddhist monks still do in warm countries. And he came across someone on the side of the road who was a woman who was nursing a baby, and there was a dog who was kind of like, and she was eating something, I think, and the dog was like, wanting that food that she had, and she got disturbed by it, so she kicked the dog. And this monk was able to see previous lifetimes and saw that this woman was actually nursing someone who had been her enemy in a previous lifetime. And I can't remember, it was her father, mother, or child from a previous lifetime, was the dog, trying to be close to her, and only in this way, by begging for this piece of food she had. So she was kicking. This is samsara. We don't see things perfectly. And yet we completely believe in the validity of what we see and how we see. We're never looking at our own mind. We're always looking outward. So many of the sayings that you come across, especially in the New Testament, are so remarkable to me because it's really Buddhism, but of course expressed in a theistic kind of way, which is, I think, all Jesus could do at that time. What are you going to do? But nonetheless, what strikes me about the Dharma is the depth of it in terms of its teachings. It has all these methods and all this analysis, and that allows you to have confidence in it because it's not, a simple blind faith. It's not blind faith at all, rather where we can investigate. So this statement, I think, is of Jesus. You see the beam in your enemy's eye, but you don't see the mote, the dust speck in your own eye, or the other way around. You see the dust speck in your enemy's eye. We're so sharp, with our discriminating mind. We can see the minor imperfection in someone else, but somehow we're not seeing the huge imperfection in ourselves. The Buddhist path is the opposite. You're looking at yourself. It says the whole world is proclaiming its virtue and hiding its shortcomings. The Buddhist way is the other way around. With confession, that we're revealing to ourselves, especially, our own shortcomings and hiding our virtue. It recognizes the upside down nature of samsara. And so the way to get out of it, seemingly, is upside down too. But in actuality, it's not. It's paradoxical because of our fundamental ignorance. But yet the benefit is just totally positive. So it's truly a remarkable thing to realize that we live in a cave, because we keep trying to find some sort of source of refuge in the cave, and fearful that there's nothing outside of the cave. There's that fear can come up too. But remarkably, the path of the Dharma, the Buddha himself said, is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. So we have this graduated path, and that's so important because, why do we have all these esoteric things here, for instance? All these seemingly kind of bizarre kind of methods even, and strange symbols and all these things that seem, not necessarily part of our culture, although going way back it actually is. But nonetheless, why? Because there's such a range in human beings. And you never know. It's like you have a certain medicine that you need at one time, and later after that you need maybe a different medicine, or maybe that one medicine works for you all the way to health. Everybody's different. The variety is just like mind-boggling, It's like looking through the James Webb telescope at the variety of the universe. It's just beyond comprehension. That's why they say samsara is beginningless. We can't handle that. We want to have a big bang. Something to satisfy our sense of this outer appearance. Can we handle anything that's beyond that? So what do? Well, in the outer way, we stop hating. Dalai Lama says, at least don't harm. We can stop that. So our outer projections, recognize that the mind is king, fundamentally, we're creating all of this. And therefore we can cure it. This is the great discovery of the Buddha, that it's not just, nihilism. It's not just some emptiness. It's not just some escape from pain. It is that, but it's a transcendence of pain. The good is more real than the bad. That's what's so mind-boggling about it. It's exceedingly positive with a capital P. So we start with not harming. So at least we're withdrawing from all this negative stuff that we do by body, speech, and mind towards others. But then we take this next step, but in an outer way of actually generating love, compassion, and this great motivation, wanting them to go all the way to Buddhahood, beyond happiness. So we're doing that in an outer way, and we can all do that because we're all completely wired to do that right now. When the obstacles come up, the habits, the negative thoughts, the taking the joy in someone else's pain, all those things, we're meditating. We're learning to look at our mind. And so we recognize these things as they come up. And from our study, we slowly start to believe, this only makes it worse for me. And then from our experience, we can see how it does, because in our meditation, you can be in a peaceful kind of expansive kind of place. And then you have some stupid little idea about, some nasty thing your neighbor did and what you're going to do back at him. And so that agitates the mind. So now you not only have the concept that this is not helpful, but you have the actual experience. You've seen the disturbance in your own mind. And what comes out of that disturbed mind is not good. So that's the outer. We have all these enemies out there, right? All these other beings, anyway, that are creating trouble for us, including even the ones that we love, in that we cling to them, actually restricting their own inherent freedom and function. It's like we love too much, but it's based on a self-love, actually. So we start to see all that. These outer beings, we finally have kind of a whole body of thought that supports us in how to deal with them. So we're immediately benefiting them, benefiting us. But then there's an inner aspect to this too, of course, because the enemies then are our kleshas, our afflictive thoughts. We give them up. How courageous is that? The great renunciation. We're not only renouncing now our outer behaviors and our habits, but we're renouncing our inner mental habits with all of this. And so all of those distracting thoughts, the beings become those distracting thoughts. And now suddenly you're faced with, just an army, just a horde of enemies in an inner way. They are the ones that really harm us. You're acting out of our negative thoughts has the power to throw you into lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of suffering. They are so much greater than any outer enemy we might have, who has the ability to put you in jail, the ability to kill you, but that's a one lifetime deal. So now we're doing something greater on this inner path. This is the great Mahayana. This is what the Dalai Lama teaches. This is what Khenpo teaches us, every time, dealing with this inner path. It gets even more subtle, though, and this is why we present the full range of teachings here in a center like this. Because our particular tradition, not only is one of the new schools of Tibetan Buddhism, which is, we share the same tradition going way back with the little 37 practices, prayers that we read. This was a Kadampa monk, the students of Atisha, and way, way, way back in Tibet. So what came out of the Kadampa? Well, the Gelug, Dalai Lama's school, is inheritors of the Kadampa, and so too the Kagyu, us. So we share all of that, these new schools of Tibetan Buddhism, but also we share the old school, Guru Rinpoche. Because once, way back when, a Dzogchen master became head of the Drikung. Even though he was Nyingma, he was head of this Kagyu school. It shows you the vast non-sectarianness of these teachings, right from the get-go. But for us, we've got the full range of teachings here, so this is very helpful. So we've got the outer, stop harming, try to help if you can, but at least stop thinking of people as enemies or as someone you can just manipulate, not seeing it through this lens of self-grasping. But then we go to the inner path where we're suddenly looking, what's the, a step inward. What causes our bad actions, our bad karmas? Karma means action. It's the kleshas. It's these negative mindsets. So now in the inner path, we're looking at that, and all our thoughts, our negative thoughts, become our enemies. But we can go even more subtle. And now with the Tantra, you can bring all those negative mindsets into purity. You can bring them, you can create this mandala, and they're all there. Vajrakalaya is pure, but he's surrounded by all these scary looking characters, with wings, drinking blood, flying around. What are they doing? We've now, it's the great path of transformation. So we have this path of, for starters, renunciation. We're not harming anymore. An outer renunciation. Then there's an outer doing positive, accumulation of merit, thinking good things towards the people that we formerly hated or whomever. But now in this inner path, we're working with the mind itself. But now we've gone a step further and we're working with the subtle mind. So this has to be understood because it all comes out of, the Buddha said, taught cause and effect. That's his greatest teaching, cause and effect. So if you're interested in happiness, what's the cause of that? If you're interested in developing great compassion, what's the cause of that? If you're interested in sort of being beyond peace beyond happiness and suffering, what's the cause of that? And farther, what's the cause of Buddhahood? So it's so mind-boggling. I mean, the Buddha said, bodhicitta is the cause of Buddhahood. In a sense, that's all you need to know. Because all of these teachings, you can go into them as deeply as you want to understand in order to give you confidence. That's the point of them. It's not to make a god or anything out of all of these methods. They are sacred. Why? Because it's the light that gets us out of the cave. So in the midst of all of these shadows, there are some shadows that actually have the effect, if we follow them, of dissolving themselves, leading you beyond that limited understanding. So how great is that? That is Buddha Shakyamuni teaching in an impure realm. You have to use what seemed to be, if you look at it scientifically, this looks like an impure method, right? So it's a paradox. But when you realize your own suffering, when you realize our actual situation, then suddenly your heart opens up to possibilities. And all right, maybe there's something I don't understand completely. It's paradoxical. I don't care. I'm drowning. Someone throws me a life raft. I'm not suddenly saying, you know what? This life raft is white in color and I want a red one. It's not like that. This isn't shopping. This is existential. This is critical. And it comes from recognizing our actual situation. So all the study and the learning, in addition to our own experience, which gives it oomph, but all the study and learning is to allow us to, through our own efforts, increase our confidence and faith, the energy out of which we can act in these positive ways. But it's also to give us the means of communication, which is extremely helpful because we're dealing with sentient beings in our life, whether we like it or not. You know, serial killers are dealing with sentient beings. People who are hermits are dealing with sentient beings. So these methods of communication are extremely helpful for clarifying our mind, for helping us in our own studies and on the path. But so these are remarkable methods. And then finally, there's the method of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, you know, just direct recognition of the nature of mind. This takes great faith because right now we're living in the cave. So it's like it said in, I think, what is one of the verses here? Is it 29? Let's see. No, verse 30. Since the five perfections, this is the path of the perfections that the Dalai Lama teaches. It's the path of transcendent giving, transcendent ethics, transcendent patience, transcendent joyful persistence, effort, transcendent meditation, and then transcendent wisdom. So those are the six perfections. The path of the perfections is what Mahayana Buddhism is all about. Since the five perfections, everything short of wisdom, without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment. Along with skillful means, the first five, cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the three spheres as real. This is the path of bodhisattvas. So the three spheres, this is the conception of all unenlightened existence. There's the realm, sometimes they're called the three, do you say three realms? Three spheres. Yeah, sometimes you use the word realms. But there's a sphere of desire. That's where we are. Also with the animals, hungry ghosts, hellish beings, lower gods, but sensual gods, kind of like the gods of ancient Greece. That's the desire sphere. Then there's the sphere of pure form. These are all just higher gods kind of thing, these incredibly subtle existences. And then finally, the formless sphere, which is called the stations of Brahma, the highest god in ancient India. This is a state of just where the mind is formless. You're just living in the level of mind. And these four stations, viharas, these four temples of Brahma, divided into. The first one is just your mind is just in a state of just uninterrupted love. I mean, you don't even have objects. It's just the love itself. The next Brahma up is limitless compassion, just wishing to be without suffering, everything, everyone, the plants, everything. And the next stage above that is called emptiness. It's not the Buddhist emptiness, shunyata, because there's not form involved. There's no, it's formless realm, formless sphere. And so what are we? It's just emptiness. It's just like nothing. There's just nothing. It's kind of a nihilistic kind of thing. You can't be harmed because it's just this, you're aware, it's paradoxical because you're aware of nothing, but there's still awareness. And then the highest realm, highest worldly realm, is neither perception nor non-perception. So think how subtle that's getting. That's the state that the Buddha attained with his final teacher. And that man said, here, why don't you take over my job? You can be my successor and teach students. And the Buddha said, no, because I haven't discovered the cause of suffering. So these are very, very high and subtle worldly states where, you can sort of be there forever, seemingly. But the Dalai Lama gave a teaching on that. Let me see if I can bring this up for you. Yeah. This is actually from Maitreya, who was a great Indian monk. And he wrote a text called the Abhisamaya Lamkarika. Forgive the Sanskrit. People, I talk like this, people think I know what I'm pronouncing. It's like that guy that calls you from a bucket shop in Brooklyn, says, I got a hot stock. You're living next door to some financial expert, but you can't believe him because he's too close to you. He lives too much. Rather, you believe some guy that doesn't know what the hell he's talking about because you think he's good because he's far away and you don't know him. So that's my Sanskrit pronunciation. Sorry. But anyway, through wisdom, no abiding in existence. Through compassion, no abiding in peace. So these higher realms are completely peaceful, beyond worldly peace. And of course, it's very, very seductive. If you can be there, it says that you can stay there for an eon. But the teaching says that at some point, a Buddha appears to your mind, and light goes from the heart of the Buddha to your heart. And suddenly it hits you that, yes, I'm in this unbelievable state of peace. I'm just fine. I don't need anything, except it's still not perfect, because you're aware of all the sentient beings who are suffering. And although it's like a dreamlike suffering, it's like a mother seeing her child having a nightmare. The mother is only experiencing the nightmare through the filter of the daughter's sleeping experience. It's totally real for the child. For the mother, that dream itself is not real, but she's seen the effects of it, the suffering. And so when you're aware of all those suffering sentient beings, you realize this state of peace is not enough. And that's why it says, through compassion, no abiding in peace. And, it seems, again, paradoxical. Aren't we looking for peace? Without method, this is far. So through wisdom, no abiding in existence, no attachment to existence, no wanting this to be my place, push away the guys that are threatening my cloud, bring on other people so I can have more enjoyment for myself. Who cares about them? No abiding in existence. But through compassion, no abiding in peace. Without method, this is far. With method, it isn't far. And this is the mind-boggling truth. Driving here this morning, we drove by in Penfield. Kind of a modest kind of commercial building. Looked like maybe once upon a time it was a private home that's been converted. And it's oral surgery. And I just thought to myself, if I had to do oral surgery on somebody right now, wow. I mean, you're so aware of what you don't know. You think of the skill involved. I think of these people, it's like the anesthesia. The proper dosage of it, where you inject it, how you inject it, the skill to do that, not to mention, those hard teeth and yanking that stuff. It's unbelievable, the level of skill. But, I thought to myself, all these worldly skills, a place like this, a Dharma center like this, has that level of spiritual skill. But we can't see it, so we don't necessarily believe it. You can't put out a sign, you can put out a sign, but it's only for people who feel for their own karmic reasons. Even those reasons are not recognized. There's something deeply powerful in each one of us, unrecognized, that is actually guiding us in the right way. This is renunciation. It's just really funny, it can even be said, he came to bray and he stayed to pray. What's reflected here is something that is so vast and so great, and we can get a touch of it. That touch is enough to transform a life. Without method, this is far. With method, it isn't far. It's all about method. It's said that we fly to Buddhahood of two wings, wisdom and compassion. You have to have both wings going. If you only got one wing, you're just on the ground flapping around. Sometimes they say wisdom, compassion, but there are other models of it that say wisdom, transcendent wisdom, and method, upaya, skillful method. You have to have method. And that's where some faith comes in. But again, not blind faith. Anyone who's even heard the name of the Buddha is already going in the right direction. But then it takes investigation. investigation. Is this really true? Dalai Lama said, "It is said that our fundamental ignorance is the root of conditioned existence, and that karmic energy is its activating force." So karma is the force that makes stuff happen, action. Years ago, I happened to hear a taped teaching from Kala Rinpoche. It was this great master who's passed away, one of the first Tibetan Lamas to come to the States. And he came to the States 3 times. I never met him, but I heard tapes of the talks. And the first time he came, he taught the calming of the mind, shamatha, looking into the nature of the mind, just getting underneath, beyond, so to speak, all of just the phenomena going on in our mind all the time. Is it possible to quiet that down? And what might arise if that's quieted down? So he was teaching about that and how this kind of practice for self-liberation has the power to lead us to an insight into the nature of the mind. And it seems like a temporary phenomenon, but nonetheless, it does. That was his first trip to America, just teaching this basic meditation, this meditation that is part of every single meditation that's going. You can't do the highest tantra without this shamatha, this concentration aspect. The second time he came, he taught bodhicitta and the great Mahayana. He taught specifically Tonglen, this practice of taking on, breathing in all the suffering of the world, transforming it in your heart through your own bodhicitta, your own motivation, and then breathing out this crystal benefit light permeating everywhere. He taught that. There's another type of way to develop bodhicitta, which is the 7 steps. You go through this logical process, and you eventually get to a spot where you realize you have to save all sentient beings, but you don't know how. So there's this leap. So one was developed by Maitreya, one that I just quoted, and another one is developed by Asanga. But nonetheless, these ways of developing bodhicitta. So he talked about this, and he was teaching in a like a movie theater or an auditorium kind of thing with like 2,000 people. And when he was describing the visualization that you breathe in all this suffering in that, someone in the middle of the audience suddenly yelled out, "But I don't want to get cancer." This natural, it was good. He was feeling it. This natural attachment that we have. This is the way to transform. But nonetheless, the third time he came to the States, then he started teaching the Tantra. You have to understand the fundamental sanity of all of this. You have to go to the beginning, which is do no harm. And then you take the step of trying to help others. Can I really help others? The skillfulness of it is method. I mean, it's just method. You want to be a tennis champion, but you have to hold the racket the right way. Maybe there are slightly different ways of holding the racket. That's fine. But you can't be holding the web side of the racket and trying to hit the ball with the handle. It's not going to work. It's just reality we're dealing with. This isn't a belief system per se. Yeah, the path of transformation. And so here, because for whatever reason, I feel confident that there isn't one person in this room that was looking through a book and said, "Hey, look at this, Drika Kagyu, that's me." Nobody thinks like that. Rather, it's coming from within. But we, through our own positive karma, find ourselves in a situation where the full range of the teachings, as they've been kept alive for 2,600 years, are here. A lot of teachings that have died out. Kala Rinpoche taught on, really what are we doing here? He says, we're covered. Why don't we experience our true nature or recognize that we're experiencing our true nature? He says it's because it's covered. We have veils over our eyes. The outermost veil is karma. All the stuff that you can read about in the newspaper, all the stuff that you can tell, your friends what's happening to you, what you want, all of these things. This is the outer realm of karma, of phenomenon. This is created by the inner veil of the kleshas, the afflictive emotions, including our limited understandings. So the kleshas especially, though, these negative mindsets that come up of greed, all the different levels of arrogance, all the different types of hatred, anger, and impatience, and just everything that agitates the mind. That's what creates the karma. But what creates those kleshas? Well, inside, there's an inner veil there too. And this is our fundamental dualism. We just are wired. I mean, it's evolutionary. We've developed this way. You can't pretend it's not there. I'm here, you're there. We see things in a dualistic way. And out of that comes the kleshas, because suddenly now my anger seems to make sense. It's like a real shadow on Plato's cave. Because of my anger, I'm going to push away my enemy. And to the degree that that's true, yes, but it's still fundamentally ignorant. And what's created this sense of dualism? It's this most innermost veil, which is realization, non-realization. The non-realization of realization. It's co-emergent ignorance, it said. The instant that you alienate yourself from your own mind, everything appears as it does. So these are very highly esoteric, profound teachings, but I think it's of great interest that, 2,600 years, they're still here. Human beings are pretty good about, discarding the false. It might take them a long time to do that, 70 years, whatever. And they may die in ignorance, of course, but still, the practicality of stuff, think how long we've had pepper. People went through incredible efforts to get pepper from the Indies to here. Bad boats, everything. That's all right. We're gonna take a wooden boat around Africa, not knowing where we're going, because I got to get that pepper. I had pepper in my eggs this morning. Something stable in your life, right? So the Buddha Dharma, something that this profound, dealing with the mind, it's truly the greatest thing in the world. But in a sense, it's not necessarily what people want to hear, It's not the refuge that we necessarily want. One great master said, that this refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, both the outer, the inner, and the secret meanings of that, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is not something that the world naturally seeks out. But in the end, is the refuge of all. Okay. So much for Plato's cave, right? I think the Greeks had a lot of good things going on. Mind surging inside. All right. All right, so this morning, Kempo's gone. We'll probably do Green Tara this morning after our tea break. Any questions, any discussion right now? Tiffany? Oh, we got a mic.
Right. This thought arises in me that I just have this feeling that modern society is really like a training ground for distraction and delusion, much more than, if I logically look, I guess it's always been that way, but it just seems like modern society now is just, you can see it in yourself and in people around you, and even people that have had a practice from very early on in their lives, you see them get caught up in it. And I guess sometimes I feel like we have this amazing opportunity with the Buddha Dharma, but sometimes I feel like you can't really escape from it, but maybe you can find, it's like you can go into a retreat or something like that, but also you can just choose to, take everything that comes and work with it in the most mindful and aware way that you can. But, you know, the when they say that, like, we're in the most diluted times, and it sometimes it just sort of feels like you can't really keep up with
Right.
the opposing forces. Do you know what I'm saying?
I agree with you 100%. If you think about the time of the Buddha, it was a much more stable time. You read about his first teaching to his five former students who had rejected him. They all came to full enlightenment listening to him talk for 30 minutes. So that's not just a fanciful story. But why? So for instance, we do live in degenerate times. Maybe not the worst, we can still learn. But that's why we stick our necks out. There's danger in the Tantra of misleading people one way or another. But why do we do that? Because this bodhicitta itself is radical for people to really understand that. Yes, I want to help the people I'm attached to. But these other guys, I'm trying to get them out of my life. So there's bodhicitta. No one can do that, right? The first little retreat I did, a weekend on Vajrasattva, I had the text with me in that, and I was trying to visualize Vajrasattva and reciting the mantra, which, anyway. But at the end of the 2 days, I said, okay, now I'm going to do the dissolution, right? So I had a little instruction there. And read, okay, first you dissolve all the sentient beings from the visualization. I realized I had visualized one sentient being for the whole weekend. This is all about Frank wanting something. Maybe that was the best lesson I had from that whole weekend. So, in Buddha's time, the Tantra itself goes back to King Indrabhuti, who was a Raja in ancient India. And one day, he was out in his veranda and he saw these red creatures flying overhead. And he said, what the hell? And he looked and he called his minister, what are those? They don't look like birds. He said, oh, those are monks. Those are Buddha Shakyamuni's monks. And he said, Buddha Shakyamuni, who is this guy? Well, he's a teacher, I'd like to meet him. So they invited Buddha Shakyamuni, came to see King Indrabhuti. And Indrabhuti was just like so impressed. And he said, I want to be your student. And so the Buddha said, okay, we're going to shave your head right now. And here are the vows you have to take. No killing, no stealing, no sex for a monk. And Indrabhuti said, stop. I got obligations. I've got a harem. I'm supposed to be producing whatever kings are supposed to do. The Buddha said, well, then he taught the Tantra for the first time, where he could visualize his partner as a deity, pure vision. But that wasn't practiced much because the times they didn't need it, so to speak. But the Tibetans believe these are the practices for our particular time when the afflictive emotions are very rough and everybody's understanding is upside down. We think non-virtuous things are virtuous and vice versa. When you said about the distractions that we produce, it's absolutely true. It comes out of this unfortunate wrong view that we have, just a totally materialistic kind of view. That's all that is real. And someone gave me the example once. It's like when our culture discovers some people in the middle of the Amazon rainforest never had any contact with anybody else outside of their own realm. What do? You give them a mirror, the first thing. It's like flip, 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 flip. Fascination with self. It makes people money. I don't mean it in a cynical way. It's just our limited way. So I agree with you completely. And personally, that's why I was able to, you meet someone like Gar Rinpoche, you see something you can have faith in this shifting world. And so you're willing to take a step. And then when he says something that's totally outrageous, why don't you do this practice? And your first reaction is, I don't want to do that practice. I want to do this practice. But if you have that kind of relationship, not that everyone should have a relationship like that, it's all unfolding for each of us perfectly. But I agree with you 100%. We're in very dangerous times. You can see it in our own meditation, our distractions. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable how powerful those habits are. But it's like Mammoth Cave. one match struck in that absolute darkness. It's no longer absolute darkness. And the thing is that the Lama can take you to a mountaintop. You can have all the imperfections, speaking for myself, that you have now. All the bad habits, seemingly untrainable, seemingly just wallowing in distraction and negative thought. Lama can take you to the mountaintop. You can see the ocean off in the distance. And you know, oh my God, maybe ups and downs, maybe it's easy, I don't know. I can see it's far away even. But seeing it far away, it's your mind, it's right there, right now. So that is a tremendous significance, because even though there's all the craziness going on, you've still been in touch with something that's valid. Okay? Okay, George. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank, for this morning's teaching. I sort of have a comment/question. I had an epiphany just day before yesterday. I was coming from Core Life, coming from another thing, stopped at Core Life, was walking down Elmwood, and saw this chipmunk happily bounding, and it started to run across the street, Elmwood Avenue, of which, of course, quickly run over by a truck. No, but was, and then I saw it running into the street and went, no, no, no. My body went, no, no, no. And I get up to it and it's still flipping around. It's still alive. So I get a stick and I go out in the street and I'm trying to get this chipmunk. It's still, now it's starting to walk. I'm trying to get it to go back, but it's insistent on trying to cross the street. I stopped the traffic on one side, and then this woman stopped the traffic on the other side, and she said, get him to cross the street. And so I'm prodding him with this stick. And then all of a sudden this guy, you know, and I will out myself just because of preconceived notions and things that one unlearns. Northern redneck with a cigarette and painter's pants, comes out of his truck, picks up the chipmunk, puts him in the grass, and the traffic proceeds. and I went home and I was sitting that night and I thought, all this good intention in the world without action is meaningless. And so what was the inaction? The inaction was fear. Getting bit by the chipmunk. The chipmunk is dirty. You know, I even reached in my pocket to try to find a tissue. I was going to pick it up by the tail. And, you know, so my fear.
Where's my mask?
My fear, I'm willing to hold up traffic, but I'm not willing to hold up the chipmunk.
Right.
And then someone who is obviously the bodhisattva of the chipmunk just walks out of his trunk.
Right. In a
And so the
non-bodhisattva form.
Right, and in non-bodhisattva form. And so, you know, whenever I think of, I feel that my path personally is unlearning. There's a lot I'm learning, but it's also unlearning so many lessons that life has taught me. And so as I look at my practice with a social justice bent, this idea of taking on the pain and suffering of others, it's sort of what your analogy about the honey and the razor blade. I know the razor blade's there, so I'm gonna lick it anyway.
Not right. Right.
So it's not like I'm blind
Right.
to the idea that with whatever pleasure, there's going to be some pain, and I'm willing to deal with that. But I wasn't willing to pick up a chipmunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
But I like epiphany. Good Greek word.
So, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about community, I'm thinking about Sangha, I'm thinking about Dharma, and how actually, in my opinion, certain things get fractionalized and marginalized simply because the people who are in the Sangha lived in the communities with the monks and worked within those communities and propagated the Dharma. And the monks were able to propagate the Dharma that way. We come from many parts of the city, and while our works go with us in these places, it is, as was just mentioned, it's a different kind of time. And I don't know how my psychology deals with that. I am wrestling with, you know, you know, think globally, act locally, but how? And I think that's another function of Sangha. I think for me, another function of Sangha is maximizing the teaching, not just in my life, but for all sentient beings.
And especially, George, what you said about unlearning,
Yeah,
that is renunciation.
yeah,
It's realizing I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to do all this. You know, Frank's not going to do all this. You got to get rid of Frank in a way, or discover who Frank really is. And it's just so profound. The unlearning. There was a monk in Buddha's time who he just was not sharp, and he couldn't. They tried to teach him mantra, and he couldn't. Om Mani Padme Hung. He kept forgetting it. He just couldn't do it, and all the monks were just frustrated with him. They wanted to kick him out of the sangha. So they took him to the Buddha, and Buddha didn't say anything, but said, "No, we're not kicking anybody out." And he gave him a job. He gave him in this one of the temples that they had, or meditation hall, I don't know which it was. His job was to sweep it. And so, okay, so he swept the north side, and then he got to the south side, and he was sweeping it. But then he looked over the north side, the Buddha, through his power, the north side was full of dust again. So, he finished the south side, went to the north side, sweeping again. South side now is dusty again. Back and forth, sweeping, sweeping, sweeping. He became so one with his sweeping that he came to enlightenment without any kind of intellectual ability at all. So it is unlearning. You know, it's just remarkable. And underneath it all, there we are, because there's also the teaching of how, you know, the nature of communities is to dissolve. So we're doing these things, but without attachment. It's so remarkable. It's like the outer appearance is like totally positive, but the inner reality is even, you know, beyond positive. We just have no attachment. But of course, we all are full of attachment. And the great thing about the Dharma that allows us to do things even in a dualistic way, like the Dalai Lama says, the Mahayana, we're using an attachment, really, attachment to others, to these kind of, you know, dreamlike beings, really. We're working with our love, which is an attachment, really, but yet we're working with our afflictions themselves. And in the Tantra, you're working with every negative thing you have. But that's why it has to be understood. This bodhicitta, for the Tantra, becomes the five certainties, you know, pure vision, basically. You're seeing the teacher as a Buddha, not just someone farther down the path. You're seeing your practitioners as realized bodhisattvas. So when they criticize you, pure vision. You're seeing the time as timeless, the teachings as the stainless Vajrayana, and this place bearing a pure land. This very place is a pure land. So that keeps everyone humble, right? Because, you know, we fall out of that from moment to moment. But I very much like what you said. I mean, good grief, it's really true. It shows you how strong, you know, our inherent grasping is, because, yeah, I don't want the thing to bite me, for sure. But I also like the fact that the Bodhisattva appeared in a way that could be challenging. You know what I mean? We don't know. You can't tell from outer appearance who's a Bodhisattva. He's not wearing a sign saying, "Look, I'm a Bodhisattva. I'm a Buddha. I'm a Buddhist." I'm none of that. Can be, not saying in your case, but can be obviously something that just doesn't sort of fit with our concepts. Okay. All right. Let's take a tea break. Thank you, George. And we'll ring a bell for green Tara time.